The sun hung low over the dusty stretch of Route 66, its golden rays glinting off the faded chrome of a 1998 Chevy Silverado, parked at pump number 4 of the Starlight fuel stop, a weathered gas station just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and the faint tang of autumn leaves, carried on a crisp October breeze. A blue and white sign bolted to a rusted pole beside the pump read in bold letters, "Full service available for disabled customers. Please honk or see attendant." For retired Gunnery Sergeant Tom Gunny Harper, 68, that sign was a lifeline, a promise that made the difference between a manageable stop and a grueling ordeal. Gunny leaned heavily on his aluminum cane, its rubber tip scuffing the cracked pavement. His right leg, scarred and stiff from a roadside bomb in Fallujah 2 decades ago, throbbed with every step. The shrapnel still lodged in his thigh was a cruel reminder of a life spent serving 30 years in the Marine Corps, from dusty deserts to humid jungles, building bridges under fire and leading men through chaos. Now, at 68, the simple act of pumping gas could feel like climbing a mountain. His truck, a loyal beast with 200,000 miles and a dented tailgate, was running on empty. He was on his way to a VA hospital in Oklahoma City for a checkup on his leg and a consult for worsening arthritis. Starlight Fuel Stop was his only option on this lonely stretch of highway, chosen specifically because of that sign. It wasn't just convenience, it was necessity. Gunny pulled up to the full-service pump, killed the engine, and waited. His disabled veteran license plate, complete with a Purple Heart emblem, gleamed in the sunlight. Minutes ticked by, no attendant appeared. The station was quiet, save for the hum of a neon open sign flickering in the convenience store window. With a grimace, Gunny eased himself out of the truck, his cane bearing the weight his leg couldn't. Each step toward the store was a battle, his joints protesting, his pride stinging. He wasn't here to beg, but that sign had made a promise, and he intended to see it kept. Inside, the Starlight Fuel Stop was a fluorescent-lit cave of overpriced snacks and stale air. The smell of burnt coffee mingled with the faint sweetness of energy drinks. Behind the counter, a young clerk, early 20s, with a patchy beard and a backwards baseball cap, slouched over his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. His name tag read, Ethan. A couple of truckers browsed the chip aisle, their boots scuffing the linoleum. Then he approached, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. He cleared his throat, voice gravelly but polite. "Excuse me, son, I'm at the full-service pump, number C Neon. I'm a disabled veteran and I need help pumping my gas." Ethan barely looked up, his eyes flicking over Gunny's weathered jacket, the cane, the slight hunch of a man carrying years of pain. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Yeah, we don't do that," he said, not even setting his phone down. "Self-service only, man. Everybody's got to pump their own." His tone was flat, like he'd already decided Gunny was wasting his time. Gunny's brow furrowed, his grip tightening on the cane. "The sign out there says full service for disabled customers. I qualify. It's right by the pump, clear as day." Ethan let out a theatrical sigh, finally lowering his phone with the air of someone forced to deal with a minor nuisance. "Look, Grandpa," he said, leaning forward, "that sign's like ancient. Corporate scrapped full service years ago to save a buck. Nobody's coming out to pump your gas. If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be out here." The words landed like a slap, casual but cutting, dismissing Gunny's sacrifice, his pain, and the promise etched in blue and white. Gunny's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. He'd faced worse than a smug kid. Enemy fire, sandstorms, sleepless nights in war zones. But this stung differently. It wasn't just the refusal, it was the indifference, the mockery of a system that claimed to care. "It's not about can't," he said, his voice low, controlled but laced with steel. "It's about a disability from serving this country. And a sign that says, 'You'll help.' Are you telling me that's a lie?" Ethan rolled his eyes loud enough to draw a glance from one of the truckers. "I'm telling you how it is, old man. I can't leave the register. Store policy. You want gas? Pay here, cash or card, then go pump it. That's the deal for everybody." He gestured lazily toward the pumps. There's another station 10 miles up the road if you don't like it. The air seemed to thicken, the injustice settling like dust in Gunny's chest. He glanced around. The truckers avoided his gaze, one pretending to study a bag of jerky, the other checking his phone. No one spoke up. The sign, the promise, was a sham, and this kid, barely old enough to shave, was treating him like a nuisance. Gunny's voice dropped, steady but heavy. So that sign's just for show? You advertise help for disabled folks, veterans like me, and then tell us to figure it out? Ethan shrugged, already back to his phone, thumbs tapping away. Not my call, man. My job's this register. You buying gas or just here to whine? The word whine hit like a spark on dry tinder. Gunny stood there, the weight of his years, his service, his scars, his struggle, pressing down. He needed gas to make his VA appointment. He couldn't risk running dry on this stretch of highway. With a slow exhale, he pulled out his wallet, the leather worn thin from years of use. Fine. $20 worth, he said, his voice flat, resigned. Ethan rang him up without a word, sliding the receipt across the counter like it was an afterthought. Gunny limped back to his truck, each step a jolt of pain through his leg and back. At the pump, the task was torture. Unscrewing the gas cap felt like twisting a knife in his thigh. Lifting the nozzle made his shoulders scream. He leaned on his cane, one hand shaking as he tried to fit the nozzle into the tank. A few drops of gas splashed onto the pavement, the sharp smell stinging his nose. He felt eyes on him. Maybe Ethan from the window, maybe other drivers. But no one moved to help. That damn sign loomed nearby, mocking him with its empty promise. As he struggled, Gunny's fingers brushed the old flip phone in his pocket. He wasn't one for dramatics, but this wasn't just about him. It was about every veteran, every disabled person who'd trusted a promise and been spit on instead. He pulled out the phone and dialed a number he rarely used, a direct line to Major Carla Vance, a no-nonsense officer he'd served with in Iraq. She was now a heavy hitter in a veterans advocacy group with ties to the Pentagon. Her voice answered on the second ring, sharp and focused. Gunny Harper, what's wrong? In a low, steady voice, Gunny laid it out. The sign, the clerk's refusal, the casual cruelty. Vance listened, her silence like a coiled spring. When he finished, she said, You're still at the station? Good. Stay put. Starlight Fuel's got contracts with 6 military bases for fuel services. They also get federal grants to meet ADA standards. That sign isn't just a lie, it's a violation. I'm making a call. Expect company in 10. Gunny hung up, leaning against his truck, the nozzle still in hand. He didn't know what company meant, but Vance's tone had a bite that promised action. As he wiped a stray drop of gas from his hand, a low rumble stirred the air, growing louder, closer. He looked up and his breath caught. Rolling down Route 66 like a scene from a war movie was a convoy of military vehicles. 2 massive M183 transport trucks and a Humvee, their desert tan paints stark against the Oklahoma horizon. They weren't just passing through, they were headed straight for Starlight Fuel Stop. The rumble of diesel engines shook the pavement beneath Gunnery Sergeant Tom Gunny Harper's boots as he leaned against his battered Chevy Silverado, the gas nozzle still trembling in his hand. The Starlight Fuel Stop on Route 66, just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, had been a quiet, unassuming pit stop moments ago. Now, it was a stage for something extraordinary. The horizon pulsed with the raw power of military might. 2 M1083. Transport trucks and a Humvee, their tan camouflage stark against the neon glow of the gas station's signs. They didn't just pull in, they claimed the space. The lead truck swung with precision, blocking the main entrance to the pump. The Humvee parked square in front of the convenience store, its turret casting a long shadow across the full service available for disabled customers sign that had betrayed Gunny's trust. Inside the store, Ethan, the smug Clerk, froze behind the counter, his phone slipping from his fingers to clatter on the linoleum. Customers at the pump stopped mid-fill, their jaws dropping as soldiers in full kit dismounted with disciplined efficiency. Their boots hit the ground in unison, their faces carved with purpose. Traffic on Route 66 slowed to a crawl, drivers craning their necks to witness the surreal spectacle of a military takeover at a civilian gas station. Gunny, his cane planted firmly, felt a flicker of something he hadn't in years. pride mixed with a quiet, burning vindication. From the Humvee, a tall figure emerged, Captain Maria Delgado, her uniform crisp, her eyes like flint. She strode toward Gunny, her boots clicking with authority. Coming to attention, she snapped a salute that could have cut glass. "Gunnery Sergeant Harper, sir," she said, voice steady but warm. "Captain Delgado, 412th Logistics Battalion. Major Vance sends her regards and her assurance that this facility will honor its obligations to disabled veterans. Starting with you." Gunny returned the salute, his weathered hands steady despite the ache in his bones. "Captain," he said, a faint smile breaking through, "didn't expect a whole battalion to make sure I get my gas pumped." Delgado's lips twitched, but her gaze shifted to the convenience store, where Ethan was now visibly panicking, his hands fumbling for the phone he'd dropped. "It's not just about the gas, sir," she said. "It's about respect and accountability." She gestured toward the sign, its promise now a glaring accusation. "That's a contract. They broke it." Before Gunny could respond, the store's glass door flew open and a man stumbled out, mid-40s, balding, with a crumpled Starlight Fuel polo and a name tag reading Manager, Greg. His face was ashen and sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. What the hell is this?" he stammered, his eyes darting from the towering trucks to the soldiers now checking the perimeter. "This is private property. You can't just roll in here and—" Captain Delgado cut him off, her voice calm but unyielding. "Mr. Gregg, I presume? I'm Captain Delgado, and we're conducting a compliance check. Your station advertises full-service assistance for disabled customers, specifically veterans like Gunnery Sergeant Harper here. He was denied that service. Care to explain why your sign's lying?" Greg's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I didn't. Look, it's not my call. Corporate changed the policy years ago. We don't have attendance anymore. Budget cuts, you know how it is." "Budget cuts," Gunny interrupted, his voice low, raw with the weight of betrayal. "I took shrapnel in Fallujah so folks like you could keep your budgets. That sign says you'll help people like me. I trusted it. Drove 30 miles out of my way for it. And your boy in there," he nodded toward Ethan, now cowering behind the counter, "told me I shouldn't be driving if I can't pump my own gas." The words hung heavy, and for a moment the only sound was the idling hum of the trucks. Delgado's eyes narrowed, and she turned back to Greg. "That's not just a policy failure. That's a disgrace." Greg's phone buzzed in his pocket, shrill and insistent. He fumbled for it, his hands shaking as he glanced at the caller ID. It's Ms. Larson, Regional CEO." He answered, his voice cracking. "Yes, ma'am." "No, ma'am. I understand. Yes, immediately, ma'am." The call lasted less than a minute, but Greg aged a decade in those seconds. When he hung up, he looked like a man who'd stared into the abyss. He turned to Gunny, his voice barely above a whisper. "Gunnery Sergeant Harper, I'm so sorry. There's no excuse, none. Your gas is on us today, always, at any Starlight Fuel, and we'll get someone out here to pump it right now." Gunny didn't respond immediately. His eyes, clouded with years of pain and quiet resilience, studied Greg. He saw the manager's panic, the soldiers' unwavering presence, the customers now whispering among themselves. But he also saw the faces of his brothers in arms, men and women who'd carried him through war, who'd trusted him to carry them. This wasn't just about him. It was about every veteran who'd been dismissed, every promise broken by a system that owed them everything. "An apology's a start," Gunny said finally, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "But that sign, it's not just words. It's a lifeline for folks like me. Folks who fought, bled, and still carry the scars so you can stand here. You don't get to put it up for show and then tell us to deal with it." Greg nodded frantically, his eyes darting to the soldiers now checking the tire pressure on Gunny's truck, one wiping down his windshield with military precision. Another soldier, a young private, with a respectful nod, took the gas nozzle from Gunny's hand and began filling the tank. "It's being fixed," Greg said, almost pleading. "I swear, we'll staff the pumps again today." and every employee's getting retrained at a compliance, veteran respect, all of it. Ms. Larson's already on it. She's talking about a donation to a veterans charity. Your choice, sir. Captain Delgado stepped forward, her notepad in hand. Major Vance has specific recommendations. First, that sign stays up only if you honor it. Dedicated staff, no exceptions. Second, every Starlight Fuel employee nationwide undergoes mandatory training on ADA compliance and treating veterans with the respect they've earned. Third, a formal apology from your CEO in writing to Gunnery Sergeant Harper along with that donation. I trust Miss Larson's call made that clear. Yes, ma'am, Greg said, his voice barely audible. It's done, all of it. Inside the store, Ethan was summoned by a sharp gesture from Greg. The clerk shuffled out, his bravado gone, his face pale under the scrutiny of Delgado and the soldiers. He stood before Gunny, his voice trembling. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean. I shouldn't have said that stuff. It was wrong. Gunny looked at him, his eyes piercing but not cruel. Son, he said softly, respect isn't a policy. It's not a sign you hang to look good. It's seeing the person in front of you, their story, their fight. I carried a rifle for 30 years so you could stand here. Remember that next time someone asks for help. Ethan nodded, eyes down, unable to meet Gunny's gaze. The soldiers stood watch, their presence a silent reminder of the weight behind Gunny's words. A crowd had gathered now, drivers, passers-by, even a local news van that had pulled up, cameras rolling. The story was spreading, and with it, the raw truth of a veteran's struggle and a system called to account. As the private finished pumping his gas, Gunny leaned against his truck, his chest tight. Not with pain, but with something deeper. A swell of gratitude for Major Vance, for Captain Delgado, for the soldiers who'd shown up when he needed them most. He thought of the VA appointment, waiting, of the brothers he'd lost, of the promises he'd kept. A single tear traced down his weathered cheek, not for himself, but for every veteran who'd faced a closed door, a broken promise, a careless shrug. Today, at least, one door had been forced open. The convoy lingered, ensuring every commitment was set in motion. Greg scrambled to post a handwritten sign promising immediate full-service staffing. The soldiers, with quiet efficiency, saluted Gunny one last time before mounting up. As the trucks roared to life, Captain Delgado leaned in. Gunny, you need anything? Ever. You call. The Corps doesn't forget its own. Gunny nodded, his voice catching. Semper Fi, Captain. As he climbed into his truck, tank full and heart full, the convoy rolled out, leaving the Starlight fuel stop forever changed. Gunny drove toward Oklahoma City, the horizon ahead a little brighter, knowing that sometimes when a line is crossed, a few tons of American steel and the unbreakable bond of those who serve can make the world remember its promises. The Starlight fuel stop on Route 66 stood frozen under the weight of the military convoy's presence, its neon signs flickering like a guilty conscience. The Oklahoma sun dipped lower, casting long shadows from the M183 trucks and Humvee that blockaded the station. Gunnery Sergeant Tom Gunny, Harper, 68, leaned against his Chevy Silverado, his cane a quiet anchor in the storm of activity. The air buzzed with tension, soldiers checking tire pressures, wiping his windshield and pumping his gas with the respect he'd been denied. The full service available for disabled customers sign loomed nearby, its promise now a public accusation. Inside the convenience store, manager Greg was a sweating wreck, his phone still hot from the regional CEO's blistering call. Ethan, the clerk who dismissed Gunny's pain with a sneer, stood outside, his bravado shattered under the stony gazes of Captain Maria Delgado and her soldiers. Gunny's chest ached, not from his war-torn leg, but from the swell of emotions he hadn't let surface in years. The sight of the 412th Logistics Battalion, their disciplined movements, their unspoken loyalty, it was a reminder of the family he'd found in the Corps, the ones who'd carried him through hell and back. He thought of the VA appointment waiting in Oklahoma City, of the Purple Heart tucked in his glove box, of the brothers he'd buried. A second tear traced down his weathered cheek, this one for the countless veterans who'd faced indifference and walked away defeated. Today, though, defeat wasn't in the cards. Captain Delgado, her uniform a beacon of authority, turned to Greg, her notepad still in hand. "Mr. Gregg," she said, her voice cutting through the diesel-scented air, "Major Vance has outlined non-negotiable steps to rectify this. Oversight. Starlight Fuel Stop is on federal land with ADA grants and military contracts. That sign," she pointed to the blue and white promise, "is a legal commitment. Your failure to honor it, especially to a decorated veteran like Gunnery Sergeant Harper, is a breach of trust and law." Greg nodded, his face pale, his hands twisting the hem of his polo. "I understand, Captain. We're fixing it. I swear we're—" Delgado raised a hand, silencing him. "Here's what's happening. First, that sign stays up only if you staff at dedicated attendance. Starting today, no excuses. Second, every Starlight Fuel employee from here to California undergoes mandatory ADA compliance training with a focus on respecting veterans. Third, your CEO, Ms. Larson, will issue a written apology to Gunnery Sergeant Harper and commit to a substantial donation to a veteran's charity of his choice. Major Vance is on the line with your corporate office now, ensuring this isn't optional." Greg's eyes widened, his voice barely a whisper. "It's done. All of it. Ms. Larson already approved the donation. We're wiring it to the Wounded Warrior Project or whatever Sergeant Harper picks. And I'm personally making sure the pumps are staffed by end of day." Gunny, listening quietly, felt the weight of their words. He didn't want charity. He wanted accountability. He wanted every veteran, every disabled person to walk into a place like this and be seen, not dismissed. "Wounded warriors, fine," he said, his voice steady but thick. "But this isn't about money. It's about doing right. That kid," he nodded toward Ethan, who flinched under his gaze, "needs to learn what respect means. Not just for me, but for anyone who's earned it." Delgado nodded, her eyes softening for a moment before hardening again as she addressed Greg. "You heard the man. Respect isn't a policy you write off with budget cuts. It's a debt you owe. And trust me, Major Vance doesn't let debts go unpaid." As she spoke, a news van from Tulsa's Channel 6 pulled into the lot, its crew scrambling to set up cameras. Passers-by on Route 66 had formed a small crowd, phones out, recording the military trucks and the soldiers' deliberate movements. Whispers spread, veteran denied service, military showed up, and the story was taking on a life of its own. Gunny felt the weight of their eyes, not with embarrassment, but with a quiet resolve. This wasn't just his fight anymore. Greg, sensing the growing scrutiny, turned to Ethan, who was still hovering nearby, his face a mix of fear and shame. "Ethan, get over here," Greg snapped. The clerk shuffled forward, his baseball cap now clutched in his hands. "Apologize again. Mean it this time." Ethan's voice cracked as he faced Gunny. "Sir, I was wrong. I didn't think about what you've been through, what you've done. I'm sorry. I'll do better." His eyes flicked to the soldiers, then back to Gunny, pleading for forgiveness he wasn't sure he deserved. Gunny studied him, seeing not just a careless kid, but a chance for change. "Son," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of decades, "I fought for your freedom to stand here. But freedom comes with responsibility. You see someone struggling, you help. You see a sign promising something, you honor it. That's what makes us better than the ones we fought against." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow, and he nodded, tears welling in his eyes. The crowd murmured, some wiping their own eyes, others nodding in solidarity. A woman in a pickup nearby clapped softly, her hands trembling. The soldiers stood taller, their presence a silent salute to Gunny's truth. Captain Delgado stepped back, addressing Greg. "We'll stay until we see action. A new attendance schedule posted, training plans confirmed, and that apology drafted. Major Vance will follow up with Ms. Larson tomorrow. Understood?" Greg nodded, already pulling out his phone to make calls. "Yes, ma'am. It's happening now." As the soldiers continued their vigil, one approached Gunny with a thermos of coffee, offering it with a respectful nod. "Semper Fi, Gunny," he said, his young face earnest. Gunny took the thermos, his throat tight. Semper Fi, he replied, the words a lifeline to his past. But then a new sound cut through the air, a sharp, urgent crackle from Delgado's radio. She listened, her face tightening, and turned to Gunny. Sir, we've got a situation. Major Vance just got word that Starlight's corporate office is trying to spin this as a misunderstanding to avoid bad press. They're sending a PR team to smooth things over, and there's talk of pulling the ADA grants to dodge accountability. Vance is furious, and she's calling in bigger guns. Gunny's heart sank, his grip tightening on his cane. Bigger guns, he asked, his voice steady but wary. Delgado's eyes gleamed with resolve. Let's just say the Pentagon doesn't take kindly to companies profiting off veteran contracts while breaking promises. Vance is looping in a congressional contact with oversight on those grants. This isn't over, Gunny. Not by a long shot. The crowd grew restless, sensing the shift. The news crew edged closer, their cameras catching every word. Gunny looked out at the horizon, where the last light of day bled into twilight. He thought of the Vamp Hospital, the veterans waiting there, the countless others who'd faced doors slammed in their faces. This wasn't just about one gas station or one sign. It was about a nation's promise to those who'd given everything. As the convoy's engines rumbled, ready to hold the line, Gunny made a decision. He pulled out his phone, his fingers steady despite the pain. Captain, he said, tell Vance I'm not done either. I've got a few old Marine buddies who'd love to hear about this. Some of them write for veteran blogs. Others know folks in Washington. If Starlight thinks they can bury this, they're about to learn what a Marine fight's like. Delgado grinned, a spark of defiance in her eyes. That's the spirit, Gunny. Let's make 'em remember. The radio crackled again, and Delgado's expression shifted to one of grim satisfaction. Vance says the PR team's 5 minutes out. So's a reporter from Veterans Voice magazine. This is about to get loud. Gunny nodded, his heart pounding with a fire he hadn't felt since Fallujah. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning, and as the first stars appeared over Route 66, he knew that whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone.